If you're trying to sell more of your coaching or you have a service you're trying to sell, I'm going to explain to you how a light bulb and magnetism can help you sell more of your stuff to the right people. And it has everything to do with how you tap in to your ideal client psychology in the word choices that you use in your content, your emails, your webinars, your sales calls. And the big idea that we have to get your ideal clients bought into that's novel, that's unique, that's different. So you stand apart and don't get commoditized into this very information dense world that we live in. Because it's no secret with like ChatGPT, Claude, with whatever flavor of AI you like to use or your prospects like to use, information is readily available within seconds. I mean, people can find information on the problems that both you and I solve in literally seconds to minutes. But it doesn't mean people are going to do anything with it. I mean, books have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and 80% of people, I believe, is the statistic, don't ever finish a book or a course. So people just don't take action, even more so now because they have so much information that they're overwhelmed. But nonetheless, the things that you and I do can easily become commoditized unless you know how to tap into what's going on in here and you know how to create these novel big ideas that get people bought into it. And that's what we're going to cover here over the next few minutes. Now, I'm going to walk you through a framework that I've used now for the last 6 years. I call it the Magic Messaging Framework, and it's how you can actually tap into your ideal client's thinking and then how you can create that big idea that you can infuse into all of your marketing and sales. The first major thing to understand here before we dive in is when it comes down to how you communicate, regardless of the actual mediums you use, whether you use Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or emails or whatever, it is incredibly important that you know what language your people are actually using. Because I see so many talented coaches that they're falling victim to one of two things. Either they're saying what they think are the right words, but they're not saying them in the right way or in the right order. And so they're attracting a lot of the wrong people, or they're attracting the right people, but those people aren't converting. And there's a movie that I remember I used to love as a kid, and it's called Rush Hour with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. And there was a scene where Chris Tucker goes, "Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?" Huh? Right? And that's what your ideal clients are doing. It's like if Chris Tucker went over to China in that movie, he spoke no English, and he was trying to order Chinese food. It would be an incredibly frustrating experience because he thinks he's saying the right words, but he doesn't speak Mandarin. He doesn't speak Chinese. And so a lot of times you're speaking Chinese to your audience where you're like, I'm pretty sure I'm saying the right words, but they don't understand you, or it's not desirable to them. It's not compelling to them. And so they don't move forward. That's one side of the coin that people fall into. The other is they're just being incredibly lazy and they're outsourcing their thinking to AI, and AI is producing like mediocre slop that they're putting out on the internet. And so they become commoditized. And to avoid all of that, what we're going to start with here is magnetism. And so the first part of this framework that I want to walk you through is how you actually can pull in the right people and repel the wrong ones. And so in this framework, you're going to see that there is the struggling avatar. This is the person, like your ideal client, your dream client. They are living in a story. And there's a great book that I read years ago by a guy named Donald Miller called Story Brand. And he talks about your ideal client has to become the hero of the story. And so in this example here, what is that struggle story of your ideal client? Meaning, what is the external conflict that they're currently going through? These are going to typically be visible, tangible, more concrete things. It could be weight loss, right? They're like, "Oh, I got this like last 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat I can't get rid of. My energy's dipping so low every Tuesday and Wednesday at 2." That type of stuff. And then there's the internal turmoil that they're going through. These are going to be the limiting beliefs, the negative thought patterns that they're in, right? I don't feel good enough. Like maybe this is how life is supposed to be, right? Which we'll dive into. And so what are those things? And to unpack this even further, I want you to think in terms of the external stuff like symptoms. What are the specific symptoms that are going on? Like imagine you're going to a doctor right now and you got to describe, you're not going to be telling your doctor vague stuff. Like No, you're gonna explain the exact symptoms. Like, "Doc, I got a rash on my butt and it's like pulsing red." And you're gonna explain exactly what's going on. So when you think about your ideal client, what are those specific symptoms, right? The example I just said, a specific symptom of like a problem is that they have 20 pounds of belly fat that just they can't get to go away. They're trying everything. Their energy's dipping incredibly low, right? These are symptoms of a problem. So the more specific you can get, the more tangible you can get, the more concrete you can get, the better. And the secret here is to tap into what your ideal client is actually thinking. It's their story. The problem that a lot of us as experts or coaches can get into is when we have solved the problem, we can be so far removed from the problem that we forget and we start to use coach speak. This is called the coach's curse. The more we learn, the more we know. And so when we communicate, we're communicating from our consciousness, not from our ideal client's consciousness. And that's where we need to back up to. We need to say the words they're saying. We need to really tap into that. There's a marketer named Jay Abraham, and I believe it was him who said, if you can articulate the problem better than they can, they're going to automatically assume that you have the solution. And so getting clear on what those specific symptoms are, the actual problem, and you can look at this as how are they complaining to their friends? Like, what are they saying, or their colleagues or whatever? And then what actions are they currently taking to solve that problem? That's part of their story. Maybe in weight loss, they're dieting, they're trying, the Atkins diet or keto or intermittent fasting. What are they trying that's just not working? And then going back to the internal, you can ask yourself questions like, what are the limiting beliefs that they think are stopping them from actually getting results? And this could be in weight loss, like, I just can't, it's my genetics. My genetics are just screwed up, right? Or maybe this is just how life is supposed to be after 30, right? And so it all comes down to like your specific dream client, because all of this is going to come from their head. And when you're doing this exercise, don't think about a whole niche. That could become super overwhelming because there's a lot of avatars in a niche. Think about one person, like truly one person. And so once we understand a bit of their struggle story, the external thing, like the symptoms and complaints and the actual core problems that they're going to pay for, the internal stuff that's going on, like low confidence, all that stuff, right? And the actions they're trying to take, we now have a basis where we can now start to influence people. When we could tap into their psychology, we now know how the word choices we need to use to be able to influence and move people forward. And then on the flip side of the coin here, we need to know the transformation. So the transformation is going to happen in two parts, right? It's going to happen in both the external outcome that they want to achieve. In Alex Hormozy's $100 million offers book, he talks about the dream outcome. And so there is a specific tangible goal somebody wants to achieve. In weight loss, in the example I used, maybe they want to lose 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat. Like that's the outcome they're looking to achieve. And they want to have a flat tummy, maybe they want to see their abs. There's something specific there. In business, maybe somebody wants to have a 20K per month business. They want to be able to, stash away 100K in savings. There's going to be something very specific. Does that make sense? And then there's going to be an aspirational identity that they want to achieve. What is that? There's going to be something like a mountain they're climbing. And oftentimes it's the mountain that you're climbing, that you've already climbed. And all you're doing is just being able to pull people up to that mountain, but you got to communicate it. And just like any mountain climb, if you've ever climbed a mountain, if you haven't climbed the mountain, hopefully this still makes sense. There's going to be a short term, a midterm, and a long term goal. Short term, it's just like, cool, let me make it up 50 feet. Midterm, it's like, let me hit base camp. Long term, it's like, okay, let me get to the peak of the mountain. So in any type of like goal that somebody's going to pay you for, at least good money for, is there's going to be an initial problem that's solved, say, in the first 30 days. In weight loss, maybe they lost that first 10 pounds of water weight. They're feeling more energized. They're feeling more confident. They got their swagger back. And then maybe in about 90 days, midterm goal, maybe they've lost 25 pounds. They're just like, their skin is glowing. They are finally able to run around with their kids again. They're feeling more confident than ever. They're wearing clothes that they haven't worn in years. Maybe long term is they finally stepped into being the role model for their kids. Their kids are eating healthier now because of them. You know what I mean? So like the longer term it gets, the more aspirational it gets into an identity. You see, like people like Steve Jobs, he understood this, right? When he was selling Apple, he wasn't selling a product, he was selling an identity. Does that make sense? If you think about Phil Knight with Nike, he wasn't just selling a shoe, he was selling an identity to winners. Like people that win are going to wear his shoes. And so when you're selling something, you don't want to just sell into the problem. That's part of it, but you want to sell into the identity that people will get. And when you have this clear gap between where somebody's stuck in their struggle to the aspirational identity, that hero version of themselves, where they want to be, now all of a sudden we can move on to the light bulb, right? The light bulb. And so at this point, you should, especially when this is all specific, when it's all clear, when you know how to articulate the words that are coming out of their head very clearly in your content, this will start to magnetize people and it will start to repel the wrong people. Okay. Now, let's move on to the light bulb. So the light bulb. These days, let's say you're selling fitness or you're selling marketing or you're selling getting leads, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. Better relationships. It's pretty commoditized. Like we're all doing the same stuff pretty much, you know? And so I know we all like to think we're unique snowflakes and, you know, like myself, I have a unique framework here, but all of this comes from principles that have been taught for thousands of years. And so what we want to do is we want to come up with a big idea, right? That's this middle ground here. This is the bridge that we're using to give to our person, right? This is like the secret that we're giving to the person to help them towards their transformation. And so when you think about a unique idea, right? Light bulb, what we have to be able to do is think of something unique and novel. Now, it's not so much how you name something. Like it's relatively easy for somebody to go on to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and come up with a name like the mom method. You know, it doesn't freaking matter what it's named to a certain degree. It matters the idea, the philosophy behind it. For example, back when I was selling fat loss, my big idea, I was serving business owners and parents that had that last 20 to 30 pounds of stubborn belly fat. And I was helping them lose that stubborn belly fat and step into being a better role model, a better leader. And my unique solution was called the stubborn fat solution. Now, if it was just a name, it wouldn't have gone that far. People might have been curious, but it was the idea behind it to where I had 3 different pillars. And my pillars were flex fuel nutrition, stubborn fat solution, or sorry, metabolic intensity training, and then I had like an inner size thing for their mind. Now, then again, the names cool, but they don't really matter. So the philosophy is what sold it. So when I would tell people like, hey, it's not about eating healthy, it's about eating right, and it's about doing the right types of exercise that ignite your metabolism and start to burn stubborn belly fat. Now people were like curious and they were like, what is your nutrition style? What is your workout style? So I'd be like, great. Well, you know how some people eat healthy, right? And they might diet, they might cut their carbs and calories out. What if I could tell you that you can eat higher carbs, that you can eat pretty much what you want? Now, obviously, we want to, blah, blah, blah. I would sell them on my philosophy. As long as you're eating the right amount of calories, the right proportions, and the right food choices for you. If you could do that, we classify that as eating right, not just healthy. And people are like, well, how do I do that? And now I created this intrigue of like, I want to be able to eat more carbs. I want to be able to eat the foods that that I enjoy. I don't want to eat canned tuna, right? And I would sell people into this. And because I sold people into the philosophy, into the idea, it created this natural curiosity where people needed to find out more. Does that make sense? And this is in part how I would literally get so many DMs inside. And I didn't have a big audience. I still don't have a big audience. And this is the delineation. When you're doing this the right way, you're going to magnetize the right people. And because of that, you might not get tons of engagement. What most people are doing is they're forcing the wrong people to watch their stuff, right? They're doing like these stupid reels that attract a lot of attention, but not the right clients. Or they're running ads to the complete wrong audience and they're getting plenty of leads, but it's like they're trying to force clients into something that doesn't work. And when you do this correctly, you might get less engagement. So check your ego at the door, but you're going to get more cash and more clients, and you're going to make a bigger impact into the people you care about. So it all comes from the big idea. Another example of this is a big idea right here, the magic messaging framework. I remember one day long ago, I was serving a client and she comes back to me and she goes, I did your little messaging framework that you taught me. And I started posting on Instagram. I did a workshop. she's like, "What is this wordy magic that you gave to me?" And I was like, "That's kind of funny." I was like, "There's no magic here. It's just psychology." And she's like, "That sounds boring." I'm like, "What's this magic?" And I was like, "That sounds like a good name. I should change the name of my framework to that." And so the big idea behind this is we're really tapping into your dream client psychology. We're coming up with that big idea so we can use the right words in the right way. And when you structure it in your content or your emails or your workshops or even your sales call scripts, we're putting everything in the right order so that you're able to better pre-sell, you have a better pitch, and you're ultimately able to convert more people. And so the big idea is absolutely key. So what is your new way? What's the philosophy behind it? If you have your own story of how you kind of figured this out, that would be great. Like for the fat loss one, the story that sold it, or at least got people to be curious about learning more about it, was how I figured it out. I had my own backstory about all the trial and error that I did to try to figure this out. And, how one day I woke up and I saw two abs in the mirror and I was like, oh my goodness, like this is working. And I doubled down on that process. So now we've covered how to magnetize, how to repel, how to come up with a big idea. The next piece here is how do we actually fully integrate this and communicate this within our marketing? Well, the two things that we haven't really covered here, there is what's called the hidden enemy. Okay, this is going to be like the villain of the story. This could be like in weight loss, like the diet industry or the restrictive diet trap or cardio overkill, right? We're just naming the villain. And then we have a new belief that we need to get people to believe, right? If somebody believes their genetics are screwed up or they need a diet or whatever, they're not going to buy your stuff unless they believe what you believe. So this is like where I sold you have to eat right or you need to dial in your messaging or whatever. And so, how we go about communicating this, we need to start with the problem. We need to end with the transformation. The middle ground is going to be our unique big idea. The way we sell that big idea, at least there's many ways we could do it. One of the best ways is using story, metaphors, and analogies. Stories, metaphors, or analogies. If we want to create a little acronym out of this, we can call it the MASS method. Metaphors, analogies, stories. Metaphors, analogies, stories. Write that down. The more you can use this, the more sales you will make. I don't care if you're doing a reel, a YouTube video like this, a workshop, a sales call. The more you could do this, the more you will sell. And so, how I'd go about doing this, I'll give you a demonstration. I'm going to sell fat loss because it's probably the most relevant no matter what. Even if you're selling business coaching or relationship coaching, you'll get the concept of this. And so I'm going to pick my old niche because I did it a million times. So, hey, this is pretend I'm just doing like a short little video. Hey, look, if you're a parent or a business owner and like you've been struggling to lose that last 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat, and no matter what you've tried, like you literally hire trainers, you have done Weight Watchers, keto, intermittent fat. It feels like you've done like every diet you could think of under the sun. You've tried doing boot camps, and no matter what you do, you just can't seem to lose that last little bit of stubborn belly fat. And it's driving you crazy. You're frustrated. You're feeling a little self-conscious about it. And maybe you're thinking that like, man, I guess this is how life's supposed to be. Or maybe I'm genetically just not meant to actually see the results that I want. Well, let me tell you this, like, I actually had a client, her name was Susie, and she was struggling with the exact same thing. And one of the things that I'm going to show you here in just a second that we implemented that actually allowed her to be able to lose that last 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat and to be able to become the role model for her kids because she wants to show her kids what was possible. And now, like literally, she's like going out on the boat with her husband and her kids almost every weekend right now. And before, she was afraid to wear the 2-piece bathing suit she had in her closet. She was always covering up. Now she's wearing it in confidence. She's still not where she wants to be, but she's gotten so far. I'm gonna explain to you what we did. But if that's you, understand this. Like what we've been sold in health and fitness is like we've been sold that you have to diet or you have to eat healthier. And so we diet and we try to eat healthier. And let me tell you, my friend, you've probably been stuck in what's called the restrictive diet trap. And it's a trap that we just can't seem to break because we're constantly being marketed all of these new solutions. And what we need to be able to do is what some may call is creating something custom. And so, for example, I remember when I was trying to first figure this out, like I was doing like all of the little diet trends. I was eating I was in my fire station eating canned tuna and crackers, and I was miserable. I was running around my fire station. And what I ended up doing is I started to try this carb backloading thing, this island diet thing, and I was just trying all of this stuff. I was starting to go to the gym and lift weights, and I didn't know what was working. And then one day, I kind of stumbled upon this nutrition methodology where it was like eating more carbs. I was literally eating a ton of carbs at nighttime. Like I was eating in the morning like a peasant. At night, I was eating like a king. And it was crazy. And I was like, there's no way this can work. And sure enough, in about 2 weeks, I started to actually see abs coming in, just like little few abs. And I was like, what? So I doubled down. And in the last few years, I've dialed in this methodology of eating and exercising. I call it flex fuel, and it's about blah 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 blah. It's about eating it. So in this case, I would now start to sell that, but I bridge the gap with a story, and I use client stories. I use my story, and then what I would do between each pillar. Now I'm out of the example here. Is I would now sell each pillar. So I would be like, so flex fuel nutrition. You know how some people like think they're eating healthy, but they're like tremendously under eating. It's kind of like going to the gas station before a 10-hour road trip and filling your car up with $5 and gas in it. How far do you actually think you're going to make it? Probably not very far. Well, the same thing happens in your body. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to eat right. When you dial in your calories, you got your proportion sizes correctly. You've got the food choices that work with you. All of a sudden, you will literally start to melt fat away. And I would do that with each pillar. And I'm always going to use either a short metaphor, analogy, or story to sell that. So, anyways, I hope this helps. I've done long master classes and workshops on this topic. So if you want to go deeper, just let me know. I will probably have a link around the description here to go deeper into this type of topic around pre-selling leads and whatnot, if you do want to get further education. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to click subscribe. Let me know down below what questions you have as well. But it all comes down to this: articulating the problem so clearly, so specifically, that your ideal clients will automatically assume you have the solution. So you start to magnetize the right, repel the wrong, and then coming up with that big idea and learning how to communicate it in a way where it's desirable, it's novel, it's unique, and it's compelling, and you will get more people to buy your stuff. Have an amazing day, and we'll chat soon.